to help us to grow spiritually. We know that if we're going to grow spiritually, God has to be the one who helps us to grow, or He gives us the things that we need to grow spiritually. In John 15, verse 1, we know that it is God who is the vine dresser. He prunes us from time to time. We know that. And I've entitled this lesson tonight, The Fertilizer for Spiritual Growth. It's what God uses to help us to grow spiritually. Now, I want to talk about just 5 things, if our time will permit, 5 things or 5 types of fertilizer, if you will, that God uses to ensure the growth of His people. We're going to be looking at some scriptures tonight, so just be prepared. You can go ahead and turn to Genesis chapter 37, and we'll be looking at several passages from Genesis 37. But I want to just give you 5 things, and again, we can if you can't write them down, you'll hear them again. So if you miss one, don't worry about it because you'll hear it again. The 5 things that God uses to help us grow spiritually. 1 is hardship. God uses hardship to help us to grow. 2 is encouragement. 3, accountability. 4 is time, and 5 is humility. These are the growth supplements that we will look at tonight through the lens of some biblical characters that experience hardship, encouragement, accountability, time, and humility. I want to begin by looking at the hardship of Joseph. Fortunately for us, I preached a series on Joseph last year, so we should be familiar with the story of Joseph that starts actually in Genesis chapter 37, and it spans 13 chapters all the way to Genesis chapter 50, where Joseph finally dies in Genesis chapter 50. It is a story, this is a story of hardship, it's a story of tribulation, and when we first meet Joseph, he is in a situation because of favoritism. His father, the Bible says, let's just look at that right quick. Genesis chapter 37, verses 3 through 8. Genesis 37, 3 through 8. Here we go. And it says, Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. So Joseph is really in this situation, or the situation he gets in, it actually starts out because of the jealousy of his brothers. That jealousy was actually caused by their father, Jacob, because he loved Joseph, and evidently the other boys knew it. He loved him in such a way that they could tell that Joseph was the favorite. So, but God has a plan for Joseph, and it's amazing to me. We can look at this now and see all that God was doing, but Joseph, Jacob, his brothers, they had no idea what was going on. Mm-hmm. God will use adversity in our lives to help us to grow spiritually. Yeah. So in Genesis chapter 37, verse 10, so it says, so he told it to his father and his brother. This is a dream. God has allowed Joseph to have these dreams. He is actually speaking to Joseph through these dreams, and he tells his brothers about the dreams and his father. Of course, his father rebukes him. He's upset, and he says to you, are you telling me that me and your mama, we're going to be bowing down to you, me and your mama and your brothers? But they had no idea what God was doing. Just a little background. So in the midst of all of this, God is speaking to Joseph. He speaks to him through 2 dreams. His family, they don't like it. They're very negative about his dream, which causes Joseph to be sold into slavery because of the jealousy of his brothers. He was eventually taken to Egypt. Just now, I want you to imagine this with me. We know the story about Joseph. First of all, they throw him in the pit. He's in a pit. There's no water down there. There's no record. The Bible don't talk about how they took him lunch and food and water. So he's in a pit. A dry well is what it actually is. A well that is dried up. He's down there. We don't know exactly how long he's there. They bring him up out of the pit, and he's probably thinking, okay, the joke is over. And if you read the history of Joseph, he's probably going, I'm going to tell it, I'm going to tell it, I'm going to tell it. And they sell him to a band of Midianites. These were guys they were guys that traded and bought and traded things. So they take Joseph down to Egypt. Again, he has no idea what God has done. Imagine this with me. I think you'll agree when I say this. Do you think Joseph was praying?
Yeah.
He's with these strange people. Do you not think that Joseph is praying? He's praying, and guess what? God is saying nothing. He has no clue what's going on. As a matter of fact, Joseph doesn't really realize what's going on until way later on, after he does all that stuff with the food and his brothers, they're reunited. But while he's going through all of this stuff, Joseph has no clue. But when you read the story, I don't find where this 17-year-old young man complains one time.
He does.
He has no clue what's going on. He's 17 years old. He's taken away from home. He ain't gone off to college. He's been sold into slavery. And he doesn't complain. Well, at least the Bible does not say that he complains, not even one time. When the story picks up again in Genesis chapter 39, Joseph is now working in the house of Potiphar. And keep in mind, God is using all of this in his life to get Joseph to a certain point. He's been placed in charge of everything that Potiphar owns. Joseph is prospering because of God's blessing. Not only is Joseph prospering, but Potiphar is prospering as well. Man, it's going good for him. But here comes Mrs. Potiphar. God don't even give her a name. We just know she's Potiphar's wife. She plots to seduce Joseph. Matter of fact, she sets it up so that there's nobody in the house, and she is very blunt about what she wants. She says to Joseph, lie with me. She's basically saying to him, I want to have sex with you. Joseph resists all of her advances, not knowing. Now he's not knowing that God that God has a plan for him. He doesn't know that he knows that he's being blessed, but he don't know what God's plan is for him. Joseph things are going well for him, but I would imagine at this point that Joseph would trade all of these riches so that he could go back home and be with his family.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't know, but he rejects her advances, and he is lied on by Potiphar's wife, and he ends up in jail. That's in Genesis chapter 39, verse 7 through 20. So the way he responds says a lot about his character. Again, he doesn't know what's going on. God never mentions to him, Joseph, man, if you just hang in there, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to open up the windows of heaven, pour out a blessing on you. You're not going to have room enough to receive it. That never comes up. He doesn't know. So he does not resist Mrs. Potiphar because he thinks, well, if I don't resist her, God is not going to bless him. Listen to what he says in Genesis chapter 39, verse 9. He never mentions to her that he would miss out on his blessings. Instead, he says, I cannot commit adultery because it would be a sin in God's eyes. In the midst of a difficult situation, he maintained his divine perspective. I asked myself, how's this young guy, this little kid, 17, 18 years old, how is he able to resist this woman? And she probably was, probably a nice looking girl. How is he able to resist her? How is he able to, push her away? How is he able to stay encouraged while he's in jail? How is he able to go through all of these things and never give up? Well, I believe that Joseph, through it all, did something that we need to do whenever we're experiencing hardship and trouble in our lives. Here's what he did. He kept his eyes on God. Yeah. He believed the promises of God. I guess those dreams that he had, he actually believed that one day that he was going to be in a position of power, but before he could get there, he had to go through some hardship, some trials and tribulations. In the midst of our circumstances, whatever they may be, Joseph teaches us a lesson tonight, and here it is. Keep your eyes on God. Mm-hmm. So, well, again, we've been through all that. He's thrown in jail. He's made it. He's in Egypt. And if you read the story, of course, Joseph rises to power. The brothers come, and we know all about all the things that he did. And through it all, after they're trying to apologize and all that, Joseph says something that really is mind-blowing. He says to his brother, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." Yeah. It has taken Joseph some years to realize why he was in Egypt. Mm-hmm. I think I may have said this to you guys one time before, but Joseph had to go to Egypt. Because if Joseph does not go to Egypt, then the 12 tribes there will be no 12 tribes, because they're going to starve to death out there in Canaan or wherever they were at the time. They're going to starve to death. The 12 tribes are going to be gone. Well, if there's no 12 tribes, guess what? There's no lineage for Jesus to be born in. Mm-hmm. So he had to go to Egypt. So God uses difficult situations to help us to grow. I am sure tonight that if I were to ask for testimony, that somebody here would testify that if it had not been for some difficult situation in your life, that you would not be the person that you are today. God has to use us. God has to allow us to go through some hardships, some trials, some tribulations in order to make us who we are today. Mm-hmm. So, we learn from Joseph, hey, while you're going through, keep your eyes on God. Again, the reason why, one of the reasons why we give up so easily is because well, I guess, one, we take our eyes off God. Mm-hmm. But through all of this hardship, Joseph kept thinking and believing God is going to bring me out of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Watch this now. There was disappointment. You remember the dream? He interprets the dream for the baker and the butler. He says, and when you get out, man, just tell the king about me. Don't forget about me. And guess what? He forgot. Mm-hmm. 3 more years he's in jail. Disappointment. Yeah. So as we are growing spiritually, understand this, there's going to be some disappointment. There's going to be some hardships. But do you believe this tonight? That God is working all things for our good. Yeah. Through our disappointment, through our hardships, God is using those things to help us to grow spiritually. Yeah. I didn't think about it when I was younger. But man, sometimes I thank God for the things that I've gone through now. Because, many of the things that I went through as a young man helped me to be a better old man. When I get old, I'm going to be a better old man. Amen.
Yeah.
So God uses hardship to help us to grow. Do y'all believe that tonight?
Yeah.
Amen. So when troubles come, what are we going to do? We can learn a lesson from Joseph. Don't complain about it.
Yeah.
God is working it out. That don't mean I'm going to sit back and just try to stay in it. I'm going to try to find a way out of it. But while God is working on you, don't complain about it.
Jesus.
Another thing that God uses is something that is done, not to say, something that a lot of times that we don't do a lot. Is encouragement and accountability. The second person I want you to meet tonight, his name is Barnabas. Barnabas, the first time we see Barnabas in Acts chapter 4, verse 36, his name means son of encouragement. He was a Levite. He was from the country of Cyprus. And every time we see Barnabas in the New Testament, he is encouraging and building other people up. In Acts chapter 4, verses 36 through 37, Barnabas has some land. It's his land. Okay? He's not like Ananias and Sapphira. This is his land. He sells this land, and he gives the money, all of it, and he lays it at the feet of the apostles. In the New Testament, everything came through the apostles, through the church and through the apostles. The church was the welfare. The church was the food stamps. The church was WIC. The church was whatever, and all of it was laid at the feet of the apostles, and the apostles would see through it through other men, like in Acts chapter 6, that the people's needs were being taken care of. So here we have Barnabas. He sells his land. Do you think the people who received this money or this food or whatever, do you think that the sale of the land encouraged them? I bet it did. If you're hungry and you don't have nothing to eat, somebody brings you a sandwich, I think I'll be encouraged. So he did that, didn't have to do it, but he did. The next time we see Barnabas is in Acts chapter 9. You know, that's the story where Saul is converted, right? The church is being persecuted by Saul. Believers, Saul is converted, but because of his past, guess what? Nobody wants to have anything to do with it. Can you blame them? But in Acts chapter 9, verses 27 through 30, Barnabas took him and brought him to the apostles, and he declared to them how he had seen the Lord on the road, and that he had spoken to him, and how he had preached boldly at Damascus in the name of Jesus. Here's what I want you to get. Now, this is Saul. He is a fairly new believer. New believers need encouragement from those who have been saved for a while. They don't need to be shunned. They need to be, let me bring it even closer to that. New church members coming into the church. I'll go further than that. Potential church members need to be encouraged by the ones who are already here. Look at what Barnabas does in Acts chapter 9, verse 27. First, he took him to the apostles. In other words, he introduced him to the other people in the church, the other leaders of the church. Paul is an apostle, but he don't know none of these other guys. They hated his guts. Matthew, Mark, Luke, all those people, all of the 12 apostles. They don't like him. Well, Barnabas goes and says, "Hey, you don't have to worry about him now. Hey, this guy is preaching the gospel." Mm-hmm. So, what do we learn from that? Again, new believers not only need to be encouraged, but you know what? We need to make them feel like they are part of the family.
Yeah.
You see that? He said Barnabas took him and brought him to the apostles. They make Saul feel like he is a part of the family. Well, how do I know that? Because later on, when they are trying to kill Saul, when they're trying to kill him, the Bible says in that same chapter, verse 9, 27 to 30, when the brethren found out, they brought him down to Caesarea and sent him out to Tarsus. Now, if they didn't think a lot of Paul, they didn't think if he was not a part of the family, or they still thought he was the same old guy that was persecuting the church, they probably would have let them both kill him. New believers need encouragement. They need to be made to feel like they are a part of the church family.
Yeah.
One of the young men who joined the church recently, he said to me, I'm just glad to be a part of y'all's church. I said, brother, this is not our church, this is your church as well. Mm-hmm. We're all, you are a part of our family. You are in the family. So we have to make, and I'm saying we don't do this, I hope we do, but people expect me to do that, right? Well, he's a pastor, he's supposed to do that. But sometimes encouragement needs to come from unexpected places. I am sure that Saul never thought that Barnabas would come down and introduce him and encourage him the way that he did. Sometimes encouragement needs to come from unexpected places. Well, the next time we actually see, or the last time that we see Barnabas is in Acts chapter 15, verse 36 through 41. And what's going on in those verses, John Mark has, somewhere in Acts chapter 15, John Mark has deserted. They're on their first missionary journey, and I don't know what happened. The Bible don't tell us what happened, but maybe John got homesick or something. We don't know. He has deserted, and he's left them. So Paul says, basically what Paul says, I don't want to have that, I ain't got time to fool with him. He want to go home, let him go home. But no. Barnabas is determined to take Mark with him. Why do you think Barnabas wants to take Mark? Well, Mark has already failed one time, right? Mm-hmm. He went on. Mark needs somebody to hold him accountable. Mm-hmm. When a young Christian or an old Christian sins, now if they'll confess their sin and admit that they have, that they have sinned, they need a person or persons to hold them accountable. Especially with, I just throw this out there, especially like a sin like pornography. A person, falls into that sin. They need somebody to hold them accountable. They need somebody who can say, hey, give me your phone. Let me see what you've been looking at today. They need an accountability partner, and Barnabas was determined that I'm not going to allow John Mark to go off. I'm going to, what he's saying here, I'm going to be his accountability partner. Paul took Silas, and through this little mishap, the gospel spread further. Instead of them going on, Paul and Silas went one way, John Mark, Barnabas, they go another way, but guess what? The gospel is going forward. And after that, you don't really hear much about Barnabas, but the impact that he had on Mark's life is seen throughout the scriptures. Mark goes on to be a writer, a great man of God in the New Testament. He and Paul's relationship is restored. But when Paul is in prison, he says, hey, bring me my stuff so I can write. But make sure you tell Mark, bring Mark along with you because he is useful to me. because of the encouragement and the accountability of Barnabas, Mark grew and became a mighty warrior of the Lord. God uses encouragement and accountability to help us to grow. Here's the thing we got to realize. The way that God used Barnabas, God didn't come down out of the sky and say, hey, let me encourage and hold Mark accountable. No, he uses us to be encouragers.
Yeah.
Now, here's the question that we ought to ask ourselves right quick. Am I an encourager or am I a complainer? God uses us to encourage people. How many people need encouragement?
Yeah.
I guess that's everybody, right? We all need it. There's a little commercial that comes on Christian radio, and it's this guy, he says, my name is Joe or something like that, and he says, I just get encouraged all the time. I'm tired of people encouraging me. You know what? Nobody gets tired of being encouraged. Because you don't never know what people are going through. The same way God used Barnabas, God may want to use you to encourage somebody. Let me tell you something. Let me just use myself. Just because I'm smiling, don't mean that I don't have problems.
Yeah.
It don't mean that I don't need somebody to come up and say, hey man, everything is gonna be all right. Or I'm praying for you, and be really praying for me. Be honest, how many times you tell people I'm praying for you and not? Sometimes it's just something that we say.
Jesus.
But so everybody needs encouragement. Pastors need encouragement. They need to be encouraged from time to time. They're far from perfect. At least I haven't met any yet that are perfect. They need to be encouraged. They need to be told, hey, Pastor, I'm with you. We love you. We're praying for you. We want to see God use you mightily here in the church. We need encouragement. Newcomers need encouragement, right? Saul was a fairly new convert. John Mark, he's been on a missionary journey, so he's been saved for a while. But he still needed encouragement. And he still needed accountability. Mm-hmm. Well, something else that God uses, and this is one of my favorite biblical characters, he uses time and humility to help us to grow. And I want to look at that through the life of Moses. I guess Moses is one of my favorite characters in the Old Testament. What most things Moses does, it blows my mind. But when you understand and you know the story of Moses' life, not the one they tell on TV, but I'm talking about the one that the Bible records. Mm-hmm. When you know the story of Moses' life, you know that Moses goes through ups and downs. When Moses is born, they've forgotten about Joseph. Joseph is dead anyway, but there's a Pharaoh who has risen up. He didn't know Joseph no way. So they've forgotten all about Joseph. The children of Israel, they are in captivity. They've been there for a long time, nearly 400 years. The Pharaoh, they're multiplying so fast that the Pharaoh, who's the king, was afraid. He had become afraid because the children of Israel were becoming so strong, so mighty in number that he said, you know what, we got to do something about it. Yeah. So he comes up with this, first he comes up with this plan. I know what we'll do. We will work them until they can't work no more. So when they get home, they'll be too tired to do anything but go to sleep, but it didn't work. They kept on multiplying. So he decides to take drastic measures, and he says to the midwife, he says, now, when you go to deliver a baby, if it's a boy baby, you are to take that baby's life. Mm. That's awful, isn't it? Yeah. It's abortion. It's the very same thing. And I don't understand these people with all this, my body, my choice. What about that baby?
Yeah.
You're taking the life of another human being. But see, the midwives, they were afraid. Some of them believed in God, and they were afraid. And they told the king, you know what? These Hebrew women, they're stronger than us. By the time we get there, they done pop that baby out and they go back to work. We don't know what happened to that baby. So I don't know if they were telling the truth or not, but they refused to take those babies' lives. And in the end, he starts sending in soldiers and all that. And Moses is growing. He done got so big now that his mama can't hide him, and she puts him in the Nile. Moses had his mother. Nobody, they have no clue what God is going to do with his life. Well, we know the story. Pharaoh's daughter finds him, hires Moses' mama to raise him, and he learns all the Hebrew ways, even though he's maybe being living in an Egyptian household. He grows up, becomes a grown man. All of this time has gone by. The children of Israel are crying out to the Lord, hey, we need somebody to deliver us. These Pharaoh and his folks, they're working us to death. Moses kills the Egyptian, buries him in the sand. All of this time has gone by, and these people are stuck. But God had a plan. He kills him, buries him in the sand, and later on, he runs away to Midian. If I say it like this, there was a warrant out for Moses' arrest. When Pharaoh heard about him killing the Egyptians, that he was angry. You got to remember this. Moses is working in the house of Pharaoh. He's a pretty important guy, but guess what? He is still a Hebrew. Mm-hmm. He's still a Hebrew, so he's angry. And Moses runs. He runs away. He runs to Midian. And when he gets to Midian, he eventually gets married, and he spends 40 years working for his father-in-law in the lowest position that you could have. He became a shepherd. So he has gone from the king's palace to becoming a fugitive of justice, to working in the field as a shepherd. So what has God done? He's used some time to humble Moses. Moses could not have gone directly from the king's palace and became the deliverer of God's people. God had to bring him down some. God had to, in order for him to be the man that he ultimately became, God had to humble him. God had to take him through some stuff. Do you see how God uses time? 40 years will pass. Mm-hmm. He comes back. He comes back to Egypt. He comes back. You know what? Moses actually comes back. He's not like Joseph, really. He comes back as an unwilling person. Moses didn't want to go. Y'all remember the scene at the burning bush? And God is talking to him, and man, the bush is burning, but it's not burning up. And then his voice speaks out. He said, man, take your shoes off. You're standing on holy ground. And you know what? I'll do whatever that voice told me to do. He said to Moses, you're going to deliver my people. And what does Moses say? He said, who am I? Who am I? I can't do it. I can't do it. He starts to make all these excuses. Well, I'm not a great orator. You know those Egyptian people, they love the great orators and stuff. He said, I'm not a great orator. He said, well, just open your mouth, I'll speak. He goes as an unwilling person, but he finally goes. 40 years later. These people, if I say it like this, they have been going through hell for 40 years. God sends Moses. We know about all the plagues that happened. And he started out on really what should have been a 40 day journey. And 40 years later, they're still not in the promise. But through all of that, Moses left, when Moses left Egypt, he was a proud man. But you know what? When he came back, he was a humble and a patient man. And when I challenge you sometimes to read through the book of Exodus and see all that Pastor Moses put up with them folks. Them people put Moses through it. There was nothing he could say and nothing he could do that would make them happy. I mean, they're getting, a manna from heaven. That wasn't good enough for them. They want something else. No, just whatever. They were the most complaining people I've ever seen. And God is using Moses to work miracles. Man, if I knew a guy who could stick out a stick and the water, the Tennessee River, back up on both sides, and then say, hold up, don't go across yet. God says, blow, wind, blow, and drive the bottom of the sea, and I can walk across to the other side on dry land. Whatever he said, I would do it. But when they get on the other side, they complain even more. And you know why a lot of them, well, all of them except Joshua and Caleb and the ones that were, I think, 20 years and younger, were able to enter the promised land. All of the original people that came out of Egypt died except Joshua and Caleb. And you know why? Because of their complaint. Because of their complaint. So Moses left Egypt. He was impetuous. He acted without thinking. He killed this guy, buried him in the sand. He was young, but he came back. He was a patient man. He patiently endured the children of Israel's disobedience in the wilderness. He left an independent young man. He came back a dependent man, a man who depended totally on God. He went away a proud young man. He came back an older, humble man. God has used. He has used time. Mm-hmm. You ever wonder why it took so long? I'll tell you one thing. It wasn't God's fault. You ever wonder why sometimes it takes us so long to grow?
Jesus.
It's not God's fault.
Mm-mm. Mm-hmm.
You know why? Sometimes it takes us a long time to grow? It's because we are not using the things that God has given us in order to help us grow. One of the things that God used to help us grow is His Word. Mm-hmm. His Word. We ought to be in His Word every day, reading His Word. We talked about these external things, the hardship, the encouragement, the humility, the accountability, and all of those things. But we got something right here. If we will use it, read it and apply it to our lives, I promise you, you will grow in spiritual leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
But many times we don't use what God has given us. And then the other thing is, sometimes when God is bringing us through things, we will resist God. Can I say it like this? When we're experiencing hardship, instead of accepting and believing that God is going to bring us out of it, we'll start to fight back. We become impatient. So if we're not growing, it's not God's fault, it's our fault. Moses could have been ready in 40 days, but you know what? I guess Moses had a whole lot of stuff wrong with him. Yeah, you think about it. He's been around these Egyptians all this time too. He's raised. Can I say it like this? He was raised in a godly home, but you know what? When he left home, he went off to Egyptian college, and he probably picked up some bad habits. I know we don't. None of us have ever done nothing like that. We raised in a godly home. You go off to school, go to college, or whatever. Surely none of us picked up any bad habits. Well, Moses, no doubt, picked up some bad Egyptian habits, and God had to get that stuff out of him. And one of the ways He did it was letting them out there taking care of them old nasty sheep.
Jesus.
Sometimes God has to bring us down
Yeah.
before he can use us.
Mm-hmm.
You think about this. The people whom God used in the Bible, God said he didn't call many noble men or many great men, but think about those disciples. Nothing great about them. They were fishermen. They were ignorant. They said they ignorant, unlearned men. They didn't know that. God's way. Man, those are the perfect guys I can use. They don't know anything, so everything that they learn, they have to learn it from me.
Jesus.
Sometimes the reason why God don't use us is because we think we know too much.
Mm-hmm.
My testimony is this, and I'm done. The only thing that I claim to know among you or anyone else is Jesus Christ and Him crucified.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is it. And whatever I learn, I give God the glory.
Yeah.
I give Him all of the credit. So can you see how God uses hardship to make us grow? It's like it's like exercising, working out. You start out with whatever, but in order, if you're going to grow, if you're going to get stronger, you got to pick up something heavier every once in a while. If you don't, I just noticed like would come in the gym and she would bench press, and which was a pretty decent bench press for her, 95 pounds. She put 95 pounds on the bar. She never added a pound. I started watching her. She's coming to the gym, and then when she retired 5 or 6 years later, she was still benching 95 pounds. And she looked exactly the same the day she came in as the day she went out. But in order to grow, you got to go through some hardship. So God uses hardship. He uses encouragement. Will I be an encourager, or will I be a complainer? He uses accountability. Here's what you got to understand. People who are really saved, they want accountability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They want accountability. Now, I've heard people talk about accountability, and then when you hold them accountable, they get mad. But people who are really saved, they want accountability. People who are not doing anything wrong, they want accountability. I say it like this: if I'm working in the bank, I want you to come and check my behind me.
Yeah.
You know why? Because I want to make sure I got it right.
Yeah.
I want you to know that I have not taken any of the bank's money. I want accountability. Time. God uses time. God uses humility to help us to grow. Any questions about that? About the things that God uses to help us grow? Anybody got a comment, something else they can add about the things that God uses to help us to grow? Something that I didn't think of. All right. That's it. And that's it for tonight. Next week is holiday, right? Memorial Day weekend. Monday's Memorial Day. I know some people will be traveling, so we'll probably just knock off next week. But we'll pick up the week after that, and I'm going to talk about our third lesson on spiritual growth. It's the building blocks of spiritual growth from Matthew chapter 5 after chapter 6. Building blocks of spiritual growth. We got the mandate. We got the fertilizer. Next time we meet, the building blocks of spiritual growth. I'll tell you a couple of them: faith and commitment, hope and salvation. And we'll look at the source of hope if the Lord delays to come, the results of hope, our identity, our purity and love. We'll look at a lot of things. That'll probably take us a couple of weeks to get through that one. But the building blocks of spiritual growth. We want to grow. We want to grow spiritually, right?
Yeah.
I gave you Matthew chapter 6, Matthew, and chapter 5 as well. Actually, Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through Matthew chapter 7, verse 29. So we'll be looking in and around a lot of those verses, as well as First Timothy and some other scriptures that the Lord will lay at this time. So we want to grow spiritually, right? What do you think spiritual growth in you does for the church? The body of Christ. That's it. That's exactly right. It's spiritual growth in you strengthens the church. Because if you're growing spiritually, guess what you're doing? You're encouraging other people. You're holding them accountable. And somebody will look at you and see that you're growing spiritually, and it encourages that person to want to emulate what you're doing.
Yeah.
Again, I go back to the gym, I look at somebody, like, and they got 18-inch arms, and I'm going like, and I'm seeing them over there, man, I want to do that. Maybe my arms will never be 18 inches. But it encourages me to go on, to do a little more. I see an old guy in the gym, older than me. That's a guy that comes in every day. He's 72 years old, looks like he's 50. Man, this guy looks so good. I said, I'm going to keep working out. I may never look 50 again. Maybe I can look 55. But I'm encouraged by it. So when you all, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, are growing spiritually, it encourages you. It should be an encouragement to the others. Any further questions?